Continuing. The sun is at the horizon. The former ruler reminds you of the Earth's glyph in the center. You are here. Venus is Mars. The reality of Gemini is in the second house, saying, remember the connection. Remember the connection. The action of Venus, the connection of Venus setting. Earth is beneath the sun, depicted by Venus. And the terminus is achieving its zenith. The air in Libra has set. The terminus has moved further into the zenith. Taurus has moved into Aries, has moved into the first house. Aries has moved into the 12th house. Pisces has moved into the 11th house, and Aquarius has moved into the 10th. The achievement has moved into the 9th. The edge of night reaches its zenith with Aquarius in the 10th house. Saturn is still ruling. Aquarius has moved, but Saturn is still ruling. The limit of night has now been achieved. Night is now moving towards its setting. Aries in the 12th house. Scorpio travels into the 7th house. Sagittarius passes the cusp and mutates into the 8th. This cusp, recently revealed as the alleged 13th sign. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name because I'm definitely going to get it wrong, but this right here is that cusp. That cusp, the constellation, is a staff with a serpent around it. Between Sagittarius and Scorpio. But we're going to move on. The Roman numeral is doubled in the first house, meaning the second house is where Taurus rules. Taurus plants a second flag in line to reinforce Venus's rule in the 7th house in air. We planted our first flag, marking where the sun will rise, meaning in the visual landscape that you are viewing, the sun has a rising point. We have measured the zenith of the sun. And Taurus will plant the second flag, the second staff, or the second rod, symbolized as the glyph of the Roman numeral 2. The view at the 7th receives its second rod. The view of the V now has 2 staffs. One more will finish the second quarter. 3 Roman numeral 1s are in the 8th, and Mars points at the first quarter. What I'm describing here is the collection of symbols, these glyphs, as a collection operating at once. When you view the first house, it immediately illuminates all of these other glyphs, and all of these other glyphs are activated as having specific meaning. The sun is viewed by the first house. When the first house is emptied of Aries and Mars, it contains Taurus and Venus. The view at the setting has 2 rods. Surrounding the view are 2 rods. The depiction of night and day are related directly to the water in both of these signs. As I said in a previous video, I believe it was the second part, this becomes very overwhelming very quickly. I'm going to try and get this out without dwelling too far on its actual meanings. I just need to get this information out of my head and into this world that I live in. This information cannot be lost. The first ring, Earth. This ring. This bowl. This ring is held, has a bowl in mind. This is in mind when this is visible. These are in mind when this is observed. You really are looking out from the earth, out and upon the land. Earth is on fire at the horizon. The judgment is on Scorpio because Libra has settled down into the 6th house. Virgo may pay service with Mercury as the shepherd for Leo's sun. Virgo, when Taurus has moved into the 1st house, moves into the 5th house and is costumed as the sun. In the 2nd house, Mercury becomes both Venus, ascending into the new day, fire, Venus's hair, is on the horizon. The Roman numeral for 5 is a V, and the house is occupied by Earth. Air is not a ruler in the 2nd house or the 10th. Mercury is in the 2nd and the 5th emulating the glyphs in the first house. Meaning, this sign and this planet, when Taurus moves into the first house, are now in the second. The connection is beginning to solidify, beginning to manifest. The earth is now solidifying in the first house. The action at the horizon is now harmonious with the reality of the earth observing the sun. The glyph in the first house, the moon is reflected in the third house. The moon has moved into the first house, into the third house. Water waxes into the first quarter. Water waxes into the first quarter, accumulates, moves. The Roman numeral for the third house is 3 rods, and Gemini has 2. The 3 rods, and Gemini has 2. Judgment is in Earth. Libra is now in the 6th house. Partnership, connection, hope. Water has moved into connection as the sun rises above the horizon. The partnership of Venus is now playing action, showing the partnership of Mars, the action now moved into the 7th house. Judgment is in Earth. Water is in air. Water is in air. Pisces is no longer 12. It has moved into the 11th house, possibly tossing it to Saturn, Sagittarius, through Jupiter. Pisces has moved into the 11th house. Sagittarius has moved from the 9th into the 8th. Mars is in the 7th house. Jupiter reflects in the 4th quarter. Jupiter reflects in the 4th quarter. Mentally reflecting. Water reflecting in water. Its rod will set and teach its lesson. Sagittarius's rod will eventually set and teach the lesson of connection. The X has no rod, the reality of achievement. The X needs no rod. Achievement needs no staff. Aquarius is given Aquarius is given the glyph of many vertical rods and pitch staves. The pitch staff and the rod, the V, the compass. Aquarius is an accumulation of an above and a below, an accumulation of multiple measurements and multiple circles, multiple days passing. It is a process of three, it is a procession of three V's. The waves are pointed air. Pointed air. Air, the observation. The glyph for Libra has passed through the double slit, the two eyes observing at the horizon. Scorpio's M is setting in the 7th house. The moon's disk is divided by the number 3, the Roman numeral 3 of that house. When water passes into the 3rd house, the moon is divided. You see what is behind you. Cancer's glyph becomes the siblings in the 3rd house. The moon's disk is divided by the number 3. Your connection to the 1st house, your connection to the action. The sun is between the rods of Gemini's glyph. The action is in awe, equaling Venus and Taurus in the 1st house. Fire has stepped into water. It has turned to earth before your 2 eyes. The 1st house is filled with matter, and the 7th house is full of water. The earth is a material element, and water is a memory element, a reflective element. A body that you could see the surface of while seeing its depths. Which is probably why it's on the bottom of the chart. The glyph for Venus is a disc on a cross. The glyph for Taurus has the first lesson balanced upon its head. The lesson is represented as Mercury's head. The shepherd in the 5th house, the V, a V is opened to the center, looking at the 11th and 8th, the 11th and 12th house. The V is observing these 2 houses.